Hello everybody, this is Dr. Novak. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. This is the 12 by 12 by 12 6-gallon aquarium. If you watch my videos, I set it up. The moss that you are looking at is called flame moss. It is one of those mosses that for me has been very successful. This is the tank. That's that seed I put down. It seems to be going okay. There's no CO2. It's doing all right. But what I want to do this video about is, like, you have the Kessel light here, for example. This is way too much light for this particular aquarium. We all know that. But even as bright as it is, as you can see, no algae. Another thing you can notice about this aquarium, even though this has this very bright Kessel light on it, and definitely people would not use a expensive Kessel light on a little bitty aquarium like this. It just would not be feasible. That would be stupidity, to spend that much money on a light. But since I had it, I'm using it. But I want to show you the flame moss, how it's actually growing out of the aquarium, creeping on the glass. As you remember, and those who haven't watched the video on this, all this is using is a box filter. It's not using a filter with a sponge filter. And of course, that's some of the plant. Remember when I put that plant in there with the seeds? And of course, the flame moss is already growing through it. And of course, there's some of the crypt that melted away, and it's starting to grow through the plant. Right now the plant looks like baby tears, as you can see, but there's the crypt going through. It went through its shock, which is normal for crypt to go through a shock, and it's starting to now come through. Now when I set up this aquarium, I showed you a video, I showed you everything I did, made the plenum. It has some Java fern in it over here, some Java fern, and basically it just has three different plants in it: the moss, Java fern, and that seed to crypt. And of course, whatever that seed is, which nobody knows what the seed is, but even the Java fern seems to be doing good. But what I wanted to bring up in this video is that even with the bright light and all, the tank is perfectly clean and clear of any algae problems. Now, if you remember, I used 100% kitty litter in here, just to show as a substrate, so it cost me a full $5 for a bag of the kitty litter to make a substrate out of it. It's using a slow-moving plenum and nothing else. Even though the bright light is there, I'm not having an algae problem. So it's a balancing act. This tank has only been set up a couple months, and I'm not having a bit of problems with it. The problems I'm having basically is the bettas. Now that's only because they were getting along. And here's something I noticed, because this has happened to me more than once. I had 3 bettas in there and they were getting along, no problem. But I went on vacation and didn't feed them. When I came back, then the aggression started. So apparently fish, as a lot of people know, that fish will stay in a school or group as long as there's plenty of food. When the food gets scarce, fish will start going on their own. And that's exactly, I believe, what happened. The 3 bettas were getting along like great chums. No problem at all. But after I came back from vacation, and I was only gone like 3 days, but I didn't feed them during that 3 days, then the aggression started. And as you can see, one of the bettas are constantly staying by the food tray. In other words, chasing off everybody else because they want the food. And I've done this twice, had an experiment like that, and both experiments came out with the same results. You could get bettas, female bettas. I buy several of them, but they may get along just fine. Then all of a sudden, I stopped feeding them, and then one of them became very aggressive and chases the other ones away. And it's only because they think the food is not there. But anyway, what I want to get into is, even though it has had very bright light, I saw a video and one guy makes a claim that, plants, he has zero nitrates and zero phosphates and his plants are doing it and he's got this heavy load and, well, that's great. That's great. But plants are not the answer. They're being a little deceiving. And I'm just going to say it just as it is. I'm call it the way I see it. That's being deceiving. Now, why am I saying that? Well, look at this tank. As you can see, this is the 90-gallon aquarium. You couldn't stick another plant in this tank if you tried. There is just no room. It is wall-to-wall plants. Wall-to-wall. And yet, I will be honest with you, it doesn't have zero nitrates. Okay? It doesn't have zero nitrates. And that's just a fact that people have to realize, that you can have wall-to-wall plants like this. You can't stick another plant in if you tried, yet it doesn't have zero nitrates. And having something that has exactly zero nitrates, it isn't really that good to have complete zero. You could have very low nitrates, like you could have 5 parts per million, 3 parts per million nitrates. That's not a bad thing. But to have absolute zero, there's other things causing zero nitrates than just plants. Because as you can see, this aquarium is bumper to bumper plants. You can't stick another plant in it. It doesn't have zero nitrates. So what does that mean? Well, these people who are showing you, oh, if you use plants, you'll have zero nitrates, don't believe them. Because if you believe in them, then you believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. In order to achieve zero nitrates, it's a balancing act between bacteria and plants. And since we know that you can have a perfectly good aquarium like my antique aquarium that has zero nitrates and phosphates in it, and using a BCB bag and that canister filter, but the plants don't grow as good as even what you're looking at here with this aquarium. They grow, but not as good. And as you can see by the 90-gallon, that is just full of plants, which I would say it's, let's say 98% of that tank is plants. I don't have zero nitrates, but the nitrates and phosphates are so low that still it could feed the plants and still algae doesn't take over and destroy the aquarium. That's what you want. You want this balancing act. That tank, like the 90-gallon, for example, is almost 3 years old. And still things are doing fine with not all kinds of algae over it. And you can see how much lighting's on top of that. There's a lot of lighting. It's not deceiving like you see a lot of videos where people have aquariums, a lot of breeders, and they have a lot of floating plants. Floating plants are just a little trick to diffuse the light so they don't wind up having algae. And then they say, see, I got no algae. Get rid of your floating plant and let the light shine at 100%. And now you tell me, like this tank, the light is on 100%, this Kessel light, 100%. And yet you don't see algae growing all over the place. You don't see anything that would disturb this plant, even though that's a very bright light, way, way, way over the top for a little 12 by 12 by 12 aquarium of 6 gallons. That light is. And same thing with my 90. I showed videos of my 90 having over 18,000 luminous output. This one, using a Kessel light for this particular aquarium, yet you don't see algae all over it. Is it the plants? No. It's the balancing act between bacteria and the whole environment. Plants are always, as I've told you, secondary. A lot of people don't want plants. They still, just like in my antique aquarium, no substrate. For years, no substrate. Yet I didn't have a big problem with all kinds of things just using a BCB basket or BCB bag in that one when I switched it over to a bag. So this just goes to show you this is not something that plants are going to make all the difference in the world. They're telling you that because that's what sells. Nobody wants you to make an aquarium with a plenum and you don't need plants. They don't want that. They want you to buy plants. It's part of the market that we have here today. So they're going to convince you that plants will have zero nitrates. Well, okay, if you don't have nitrates, is it because of your plants? Is it 100% because of your plants? Do you have a biological filter also going? And some plants? I mean, I saw one guy, he had, I have zero nitrates, I got these plants, and I got a sump. What? You got a sump also? Hold it, you got a sump, plus you have a substrate, plus you have all these plants, wall-to-wall plants, and you're claiming the plants are taking care of your nitrate problems. Not. I don't believe them. I would never believe somebody like that. I wouldn't even trust somebody like that. You know, that is wrong telling hobbyists that. As you have all this biological filter backing you up in your aquarium, and then you make the claim, oh, it's the plants doing this miracle. And it's not the substrate, and it's not my it's not my sump, and it's no. If you want to claim that plants alone will do everything, then that's all you should have is plants, and prove that plants are going to do everything. Plants can do a lot, and believe me, there are some plants like floating plants that will utilize nitrates out of ponds and aquariums. We know that. Floating plants. But as you notice, a lot of these people who have aquariums also use floating plants to help balance their aquarium because they don't have a balanced aquarium. And this is what I'm showing you here in this little 6-gallon, that you do have a balanced aquarium, even if you have this very bright light, and it's no different than other people's aquarium. Once you get it balanced, just like the 90-gallon, you usually wind up with just no problems, and it runs for years and years and years. Now, I have told you, I admitted the truth, that I'm having trouble with the goldfish aquarium, but the goldfish aquarium is using 80% of it is sand. And I admit, I think it's the sand compacting. And that aquarium probably should be redone, and I should probably just redo it with kitty litter, to be honest with you. And I bet you all the algae problems will go away. But because I'm using sand like everybody wants to use, because sand is dirt cheap and it only costs about $6 to $9 for a 60-pound bag, that's why people are buying it. A lot of people on videos even admit it, that sand, they only bought it because it's cheap. That's it. They bought it because it's inexpensive. And people see that and they don't want to spend money on a substrate that has the ability and capability to attract ions in it or anything else. Sand does not have that ability. It's very poor at that ability. So I believe that that tank, now going on 2 years old, is having problems because the sand's compacting. That's all there's to it. Even though there's a plenum, it's still having some algae issues. And I admit it, and I think it's 100% because of the sand. The sand, every time I have made an aquarium with sand, it's failed. It's always been an algae sink. Always has. I've never been successful with aquarium with sand. I've been very successful with aquariums with gravel that were larger than sand particles. I've been successful with aquariums using 100% kitty litter or something, I've had no problems with them. But anytime I've used sand, I failed with the aquarium with algae problems, constantly having algae problems. And that tank, I'm not too concerned about it because it's out in the lanai. It's not that bad, but it does exist. Unlike the 90-gallon, or unlike what you're looking at right here, this particular aquarium that does not use sand. Now, I have even set up aquariums for you using sand and showed you how they failed. I've showed you tanks that I've set up with sand without even using a plenum, and they failed. And I've set up aquariums using, let's say, just kitty litter, and they've been very successful using a plenum. So the point of this video is watch these videos, but don't take what they're saying that plants are going to solve all your problems. Plants are not the primary thing we are looking for in an aquarium. It's bacteria. Bacteria will not fail you unless you purposely do something so tremendously bad to the bacteria to kill it. By the time you're doing that, your plants are going to die. And I've already had people tell me they bought hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of plants and they all died on them. Unreliable. But there was one thing that even if you bought hundreds of dollars worth of plants and you set up a tank like this, let's say, and let's say all the plants died, there's one thing that wouldn't die is the bacteria. You would still have your bacteria. That's what you should be dependent upon. And this is nothing to really shun in your aquarium. Bacteria is the mainstay of all aquariums, and this is what you need to achieve. Plants are always secondary. Not everybody wants live plants. You don't need live plants. Like I showed on my 90-gallon, you can have plants bumper to bumper, and you will still have nitrates. That's the way it is. But you do, when you have plants, a little bit of nitrates is going to be okay. And a lot of people do. They say, oh, my nitrates are down to 10 parts per million, 5 parts per million, whatever. That's okay, because a little bit is not going to hurt anything, and it will aid in your plant growth, because if it needs nitrate, it will take the nitrate and convert it over to ammonia. But yeah, some of these videos, I'm just shocked how people insist it's their plants doing it. Really? Did you test out your aquarium from top to bottom to find out really what is doing it? And you found out, oh, it's 100% the plants? You know, I doubt that very seriously. I doubt that really very seriously. But hey, it's a YouTube channel. They can say whatever they want, you know. But please don't be so gullible and believing somebody who says that plants can do everything. Only if they're running like a machine. Only if they're running at 100%. Only if you have CO2 up to the 30 parts per million. Only if you have the correct amount of light. Only if you have some fast-growing plants that could utilize the nitrates and phosphates that are in the aquarium. This has been proven through tests. Even some people have done tests on the internet so you can watch their videos. Only when that happens will you see nitrates go down. And most people tanks, they don't run their aquariums at 100%. It just is not feasible to run your CO2 and everything at 100%. You don't want to be a slave to your aquarium. You want to enjoy it. You want to set it up and forget about it. So I'm just saying, beware when you watch some of these videos and think about what they are saying and listen to them, how they're explaining something, and they have more going on in their tank, like substrate, and they could have canister filters, and they could have other filters such as sumps that could be helping them along. And it's not just the plants, but yet they will claim that, oh, it's just the plants. You know, no, plants are good, but you really, really got to know what you're doing. to have 100% plants. And plants are unreliable because they go through stages of their life, just like all plants go through. Sometimes they work great, and other times they don't work so great, and they get a little tired. So this is Dr. Novak. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I try to make something a little bit clear. Don't be fished in to believing plants are the way to success. Bacteria is the only way you're going to have success. It's been going on for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, ever since man's had fish, that you have to have bacteria, we found out, to keep a stabilized aquarium. That's it. Plants can help along with other things, but like this aquarium you're looking at, just uses a little box filter, a bubble filter. That's it. So until next time, this is Dr. Novak. Hope you enjoyed the video, and happy fish keeping.